Ha-ha! That move particularly.
Yeah, it just stands out.
That was cool.
Move.
You don't know how animals are gonna react, even if they have their trainers there.
Now, I have a lot of technical issues with this sword fight, I will tell you.
All right, tell me. This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Stick around to the end to see how you can get 10% off your first website or domain purchase. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Stunt People React. We are joined by a longtime friend, Luke LaFontaine, and a new face here, Jessica Medina. Luke tends to specialize in sword work, so we're gonna be looking at some really crazy sword fights. But Jessica has a bunch of interesting stories as well. So what are some of the projects that you've worked on?
Well, I have something coming up in August, Suicide Squad 2, I work on that, it was so much fun, and also Black Adam.
I am surrounded by a bunch of immense talent and experience here. So we're gonna jump into some cool clips, and these guys are gonna break them down for us, share any insights, both good and bad, as to how these scenes could maybe be better or worse, who knows? It's gonna be a good time. They're the experts. I'm just here to drive this car. Let's go. All right, let's take a little look at one of, I think, the most iconic sword fight scenes from maybe the past 20 years or so.
There's a lot of things that are at play here. Do I have issues with this fight? Yeah, I do. But at the same time, I'm very forgiving because let me tell you, if you want to talk about one of the hardest pieces of fight choreography to do, it would be spear and shield. It's incredibly awkward to do. They're in skirts with no knee protection, wearing sandals. The shields, let's say those shields are solid urethane. Those are heavy shields. We don't have tons of historical evidence of how the Greeks fought with spears, but there is some. Hundreds of years of Greek pottery. The Greeks are always depicted fighting with spears in an overhand grip, not an underhand grip. It's an overhand grip over the shield, holding it up above the shield and striking downwards. But we're talking about mythology. These guys aren't real. So you can't really sit there, well, the Greeks didn't do that. Really? Is Achilles a real person? No. You're not dealing with two regular guys, which automatically gives you license with a lot of the fight choreography because these are two people that are basically at demigod level. So a lot of things were incorporated into this fight. There's a lot of Chinese martial arts in this fight. I really have to say, I like what they did with Achilles' fight style. Achilles is very tactical and very deliberate about how he uses his shield. They did a great job of keeping how he fought very uniform within his style. They weren't all over the map where one scene he was fighting one way, another scene he was fighting another. Now, the thing that's great about this fight scene is Hector is also a great combatant, but there's an obvious story told here that Achilles is a better warrior than Hector. The motivations in this fight are totally different. Achilles is blood-driven in this fight. A family member of his has been slain. He wants revenge. Hector is fighting in place of his brother. So Hector's motivation, Hector does not have bloodlust to kill Achilles. So their motivations are entirely different. They're both very honorable warriors, but Achilles' motivation is more intense than Hector's. And I'm a big proponent of, you've got to tell the story behind the fight. If you just do a bunch of random sword fight choreography, people go, oh yeah, that was exciting, but I have no idea what the hell's going on. I have no idea what this guy's motivation is. There's no drama in this. So one of the things about this fight is you get really caught up in this. You feel something. When Hector is sitting there with a spearman and gets that sword thrust through his chest, you care, you feel it. The drama is entirely entrenched in how this fight was built. There also are not a bunch of silly, ridiculous spins.
Yeah.
I've always said this, I understand having to make a fight exciting, but watch John Wick. You don't see somebody doing 360 pirouettes with the gun. They went and they were really, really specific about going, the gunplay needs to be real in this film. The same should be true of sword fights. You choreograph this badass, perfect, real fight. The director comes in and goes, can he flip there? I want him to start out the fight by doing this big sword twirl thing and posing and then going into the fight. And I go,
All right, so I'm surprised we haven't talked about this scene yet. A long time ago, I asked for some comments on stunt scenes with animals. And of course, John Wick, Chapter 3, the dogs with Halle Berry. So, they say when it comes to making movies, you should never work with children and you should never work with animals. There are no babies in this scene that I can tell, but there are a bunch of animals. So when it comes to stunt work, doing stunts with animals, is that still as hard as regular acting?
You don't know how animals are gonna react. Even if they have their trainers there, sometimes dogs, they get kind of like carried away.
So I imagine you have to be really patient to work a shot, be ready to be flexible. If the dog doesn't quite hit the pace. It's almost like you enter a little bit like improv theater mixed in now.
Yeah. She did a lot of her stunts, because she trains with Taryn for all the gun stuff. Taryn is the John Wick armor gun guy, so everything you see with a gun here is Taryn 100%. So all those movement with the guns, the side, that's him.
The choreography and the training and what Taryn puts into a gunfight and what the 8711 guys, the detail they put into gun combat is so intense.
Have you done much gunplay?
Yeah, a lot.
Would you prefer to work with blanks or with like airsoft or just basic rubber props?
I would say blanks.
I really honestly don't like using airsoft. It's safer, but the problem is there's an animal instinctual thing in terms of reaction and dealing with something where when you use real blank fire, an actor will react to the firearm entirely differently, and it will keep them in the scene and keep them in the reality of it. Whereas when you're using airsoft, you're forcing the actor to do all of that acting by himself. He's got to sell the firearm. He's got to sell the recoil of the gun. He's got to sell the intensity of being in the middle of a gunfight.
There's a reaction that happens to your face. Like if somebody claps their hand right in front of you and you kind of do that. That's a thing that gets missed like 90% of the time that people film with like airsoft guns or fake guns. It's just that little that your face does involuntarily when loud noises are happening in front of you. If you guys are enjoying these videos, we do one every Saturday. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you are not. It helps us out and it helps you watch the videos.
The duelist demands satisfaction. Honor for him is an appetite, an obsession to kill.
Now, amongst the sword community, this movie is one of the holy grails in terms of being one of the first films to really depict the danger and deadliness of real steel blades in a sword fight and the combatants. They went above and beyond in terms of making you feel two men facing each other with razor sharp steel and one of them could die. And when you watch this, there's a bunch of false starts. Why? These two guys are nervous. Keith Carradine's character does not want to be in this sword fight. He doesn't want to be there. He's scared shitless. And that's depicted in their technique and what they're doing. Nobody's jumping in. There isn't suddenly 30 click-clacks of swords here. Boom, he just got stuck. That's about the length of a realistic sword fight. Now what happened is he's just had 3 feet of steel rammed through the outer part of his pectoral muscle. If you look at small swords, it's a triangular blade. It's not diamond shaped. A thin diamond shaped blade, the wound will close up. A triangular small sword blade, the wound never closes properly. What always happened was a piece of the cotton or linen or silk shirt was pressed into the wound and left in there. Now, what happens to shirts? You get sweaty and stinky and all kinds of nasty stuff gets on your shirt that's now been pressed inside of your wound. A lot of these guys got sepsis. So you'd think, oh, I survived the sword duel. You go home, you lay in bed, the wound doesn't heal correctly, the wound gets horribly infected. So in a simple sword duel like that, it cost you your life. So when you look at the physicality between these two guys, Keith is trying to survive. Harvey Keitel is a madman, and he's fighting with abandon. And when you watch this sword fight, Harvey Keitel loses because he's not protecting himself. All he wants to do is chop big chunks out of Keith Carradine. And as a result, it gets sloppy, which really happens in sword fights because your emotion gets involved. You get pissed. You don't keep yourself under control. And what happens is, Keith Carradine's a better swordsman. Harvey Keitel cuts wide. Keith comes to the inside and cuts his wrist open. The minute he cuts open his wrist, there go all your control tendons in your wrist. The minute he does that, he socks and punches Harvey Keitel across the face with the knuckle bow of his saber, ending the sword fight. This is actually a real technique. This is what happens. You don't have people lopping people's heads off and cutting people in half, because in a real life or death situation, I promise you wouldn't do any of those.
I've never seen a flap of skin in a sword fight. This is out of all the sword fights in movies, I've never seen just a simple, I sliced you and there's a flap hanging.
That looks scary.
It's so gnarly.
Yeah.
It's exactly what happens. You know, I've been cut by swords and knives. I can tell you, it's not fun.
Oh,
there's
really?
Nothing. I mean, look, there's nothing, you know, I got into some things when I was a younger man. I've been stabbed.
Wow.
If you have a choice between being cut or being stabbed, trust me, you want to be cut. When you are stabbed, you're punctured. All the percussive energy goes into your body, into your muscles, into the bone. The amount of pain when the initial stab happens and the amount of pain for months afterwards it's immeasurable. If somebody rams a sword through your torso, you're not going to keep sword fighting. Your body momentarily shuts down and cramps up around the blade. There's so much trauma being done, you can't sit there and go, ha-ha, and just keep sword fighting like Errol Flynn. It just doesn't happen. I wish that there were more films out there that did their homework, watched this movie, understood what the intent was, understood the art, understood what this film accomplished, and tried to replicate that.
Time for perhaps the most iconic sword fight scene of all time, Princess Bride.
This sword fight unabashedly replicates the old swashbuckling films of the 1930s. Errol Flynn, Tyrone Power. It brilliantly captures old classic Hollywood.
I am not left-handed. I'm not left-handed either.
There's a storyline built in here of silly one-upmanship. There are a bunch of things that are done in this for the sake of comedic storyline points.
So there's a little bit of like Buster Keaton going on in this.
Now, I have a lot of technical issues with this sword fight, I will tell you.
All right, tell me. I love hearing the technical issues with it. I love hearing the historical mistakes. It doesn't make the sword fight any worse. It's not detracting from the sword fight.
Again, at no point did these guys say, hey, we're trying to do a completely period historical reenactment of a rapier fight. Nobody ever said that. First and foremost, the swashbuckling films of the 1930s, which were brilliantly choreographed by Ralph Faulkner and Fred Cavens. They were fencing masters, not historical sword fight masters. You're looking at saber technique. This isn't correct technique for a rapier. It's flashier. If these two guys were to try and replicate a real period rapier fight, it wouldn't look the same at all. You're thrusting with a rapier, you're not cutting. And there'd be a lot of blades whizzing by heads and moving by torsos. And realistically, in a fight of this length, they both would have been stuck 2 or 3 times. This is a swashbuckling fight, so you can see all of the tic-tacs and the click-clacks and the flashy cuts that are being made. This isn't how rapiers are used. Another odd thing that I didn't really agree with, but they did in this fight, the blades are very short. You can see that these swords are only about 30 inches long. A real rapier is going to have a blade anywhere from 34 to 40 inches long. Wesley's sword is not really a rapier. It's got a rapier blade in it, but the hilt is this kind of made-up mishmash thing. Rapiers have what's called a ricasso, where the small arms of the hilt leave a section for you to loop your finger through. Wesley's sword doesn't have that. So Wesley is gripping his sword in a saber grip, whereas Inigo Montoya is gripping his sword like a rapier.
It ought to be after 20 years.
This doesn't make any sense. Mandy Patinkin's sword is on top of Carrie Elway's. He could easily take that sword and flick it right up into Carrie Elway's face and cut his entire cheek and his eye open. That's a small technicality that I kind of looked at and I went, yeah, man, you gotta let that go. But if you're gonna be technical about it, these are little teeny historical, whiny, nitpicky things. This was months and months and months of work. And you want to give the respect that everybody busted their ass on this piece. Yeah. And I think they did a great job with it. There's the 1930s, and this was done decades later. Now people look at this as one of the classic sword fights. And I'm going, well, yeah, technically that makes me feel old, but yes.
I hear that the internet's going to be a big deal, and you can get into that game with your very own website. What websites? Don't I need like a degree in medicine or something like that to be able to build one of those? I hear they're complicated. To which I respond, well, have you ever tried using squarespace.com? They offer award-winning templates and make building a website easy. What? Squarespace? I've never heard about that. What is that? Squarespace has lots of great product features. You have member areas. We can connect with the audience and generate revenue through gated members-only content. Squarespace also makes it easy to put videos into your website. And they even have extra features to make sure that your pages load quickly, even if videos are embedded in them. Also, you can connect your social media accounts very easily, letting you display posts from your website onto your social media automatically. You can have multiple contributors on your website. Squarespace makes it easy to give multiple contributors selective access to different areas of your website so that you can have everybody managing their own specific content. If you want great insights into all of your statistics and knowing where your traffic is coming from, how many unique visitors you have, what pages they're watching, all that is easily available too, because knowledge is power. Now you might think that when you're uploading all this to Squarespace, there's some weird little clause in a contract that says that Squarespace owns some of it. Squarespace does not own any of the content that you upload. You own 100% of everything you upload. Squarespace does not own it, and they offer one-click data portability, meaning it's easy to copy your data back off of Squarespace's servers onto your hard drives. If you are in the market for a website or domain, definitely give Squarespace a shot. They actually offer a bunch of great services, and if you click the link in the description below, you can get 10% off your first website or domain purchase, and they also offer a free trial. So go check it out. Squarespace.com/corridorcrew. Link is in the description below. Happy website building. Jake, I hope I did you proud. Let me know. All right, back to the video. No matter what, sitting down on this couch, I always learn something new. Jessica, Luke, thank you so much for joining us. Both of these guys have a whole bunch more cool things to show you. So you can actually check out Jessica's Instagram at Jessica Medina Actress. I'll have a link in the description below.
You can check out my Instagram page. I also did Life of Action Volume 2, which was put out by Mike Fury, which is a great book about stunt performers in the industry.
Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video. Hey, we probably have one coming out tomorrow. Saturdays and Sundays, those are our days. All right, see you in the next one.